What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the show, Under Center with Abelson, presented by the Real Spill podcast. Um, we are here, man. Week 4 is finally upon us. This season, I don't want to be the first one to admit it, but we're only into week 4, and it already feels like the season's flying by. We are over a quarter of the way through the season. Obviously, there's a 12-game regular season. We are coming up on week 4, game 4. Obviously, you mix it in the buys and all that stuff in there. It drags out a little bit, but we got 4 games, 4 weeks in the books, man. A lot of these teams are starting to play their third. I think some might be playing their 4th game. I don't want to. Let's not talk about that right now. Let's not talk about that. Let's just take it for what it is. Another college football weekend ahead of us. And this weekend absolutely does not disappoint. A lot of big games, a lot of exciting matchups. And we're starting to get into that point of the season where we are starting to see who's real and who's some pretenders. This is where the cream rises to the top. We're going to see who the real deal teams are, and I think we're going to start getting a lot of questions answered. But nonetheless, let's get into this preview. Got some exciting games to talk about, so let's get into it. And as always, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share this with a friend. Like I say all the time, we are here a couple times a week talking all things college football, trying to grow this page, trying to grow this channel. So if you're into college football, sports in general, this is the place to be. The first matchup that we have, big noon kickoff. Big noon kickoff is actually doing games other than Ohio State and Big Ten games. Imagine that. This is the second game we've already had that wasn't just an only Big Ten game. Obviously, we had Iowa State and Iowa. That obviously does feature a Big Ten team. But this week we have Texas Tech at Utah, traveling up to Salt Lake. Noon kickoff in the Eastern time zone. It's going to be a 10 a.m. kickoff over there in Utah. I feel bad if you're on the West Coast. This game's going to be kicking off at 9 a.m. But I am excited for this matchup. I think these are, heading into week 4, the top 2 Big 12 teams. Obviously, with Arizona State taking that loss, Baylor's taking a loss to an SEC team. I think these are. I don't think they've separated themselves, but I think they are starting to. Utah obviously having some dominant wins. Schedule hasn't been tough yet. Neither has Texas Tech's. But if you had to ask me right now, I'm favoring Utah just to win the Big 12 in general. I know it's still a little bit early. And if you asked me who was going to be second, then I'd obviously be picking Texas Tech. This is going to be the first real challenge for either one of these teams. Obviously, the schedules haven't been tough so far. Texas Tech just really played nobodies. They played Pine Bluff, Kent State. Oregon State is, I can't even say they're really decent anymore. That's a decent team, but nonetheless, they've won by more than 3 touchdowns in each of those games. The quarterback over there, Berin Morton, he's a stud. I think this last year he was top 5 in yards per game and touchdowns or something. Coming into this game, he's thrown for 11 touchdowns, 1 interception, 11-to-1 touchdown ratio. He's been taking care of the ball. Obviously, he hasn't been tested yet. Utah, same boat. This is a team who really hasn't played anyone so far. We thought at the beginning of the year that the UCLA win was going to hold maybe a little bit more weight. That felt like an impressive win at the beginning of the season, 43-10 over UCLA, but come to find out that was not an impressive win whatsoever. UCLA obviously firing their coach, and that season just seeming like it's over before it even got started. But then, they've handled business against Cal Poly and Wyoming as well. But, yeah, this is going to be the first test for both of these teams. I think some of the early keys to this game is what type of defense is Utah going to bring into this game. We obviously know the offense of Utah has been explosive this year, which we really haven't been able to say over the last couple years. Things felt like they were starting to kind of fizzle out for Kyle Whittingham. The whole Cam Rising situation, and then last year they played Zach Wilson's brother, whatever, Isaac Wilson, a little bit, and they just had really no good quarterback play last year. Their season kind of just went off the rails. But Devin Dampier came from New Mexico, came with an offensive coordinator. He's been balling this year, dual threat guy. I'm just curious to see, again, this is Utah's first real test against a good team, and the quarterback Morton over at Texas Tech, their offense has been lining up. So Kyle Whittingham has always prided himself on having tough physical teams, especially when they play in Salt Lake City. That is one of the most underrated home environments in the whole country. That place at night gets absolutely electric. I want to see how well that crowd is during the day on such an early kickoff, but on a ranked game, I have no reason to believe that crowd is not going to be lighting it up. And that Utah defense does feed off the crowd anytime they do have a big home game. So I do think the defense will show up, and I do think they will play well. For Utah, obviously going into a tough road environment, you want a quarterback who's going to be able to take care of the ball. So again, this is their quarterback and their team's big first chance against a real opponent. So I just want to see what kind of control, what kind of poise he has, and if he can carry his team to a big time win. I have no reason to believe Morton won't be able to play well. This is a guy who comes into the season first in the country in passing touchdowns. He's throwing over 300 yards per game. Obviously, 11-to-1 touchdown ratio. But again, you're playing what I assume is going to be a physical, tough Utah defense. I want to see if they're able to help him out in the run game. Obviously, especially when you're on the road, I think that's a quarterback's best friend is being able to establish the run, just to kind of help the quarterback ease into the environment. But this is a veteran guy, so I don't think I don't think he necessarily needs the safety blanket of a run game. But again, going up against a tough defense on the road, you always want to, running game and the defenses are things that usually typically always travel. So I'm curious to see what kind of offense Texas Tech puts out there. The winner of this game, obviously, there's going to be a huge, huge impact on the college football playoff. Like I said, I think these are going to be the two teams at the end of it making it into the Big 12 championship. And this gives the winner a big boost early in the season in the Big 12 rankings and hopefully towards the college football playoff berth. I think the line on this one is -2.5. Because Utah is at home, I'm favoring Utah in this one. I think that Salt Lake City home crowd environment is real for Utah. Again, it is one of the most underrated environments in the country. I think Utah is just clicking on all cylinders right now. Not that Texas Tech isn't, but I've just been extremely impressed with the quarterback play and just the overall play of Utah, and especially because they're at home. If they weren't at home, I think this would be a situation where the home team won this game either way. With it being on the road, I think that's just tough for Texas Tech. So I have to go with Utah on this one, taking Utah and the spread. I'm taking them to cover that -2.5. The next game we got is Auburn versus Oklahoma. This is an exciting game. I'm super excited to watch this one. Obviously, Jackson Arnold is returning back to OU. Kind of got ran out of town over there after a very subpar season, to say the least. I know Jackson Arnold got a lot of the blame last year, but I think it just kind of fell apart all over for Oklahoma. They didn't have a good offensive line. They didn't have good receivers. Obviously, he doesn't help when he's turning the ball over as much as he did last year. But gonna be very interesting to see him coming in with a new team. If he's gonna play with the chip on his shoulder, what kind of energy level he's gonna bring into there. Because obviously he's probably definitely gonna be thinking about the fact that this was his team last year and people there kind of didn't want him. So, John Mateer, my leader, my front runner for the Heisman right now, coming into a new game. He's been absolutely balling. A big win over Michigan last time they were out. I think, did they play Temple last time? I think they played Temple. Because I think they had like a weird game where they played Temple on the road. Is that, let me take a look. Because that caught my eye if that was the case. Because I thought they had a bye last week, but yeah, they played Temple last week on the road, 142-3. So never mind, Michigan wasn't the last game, but again, either way, um, Oklahoma, John Mateer, he's been lining it up, doing everything, running, passing, uh, just leading that team. 282 yards against Temple, uh, threw for a touchdown or two. I think some of the major keys to this game, starting with Auburn, is can we start to see that pass game develop? Especially in the first couple games, they've obviously been, running the ball pretty well. They ran for close to 300 yards against Baylor. But I still have my reservations on Jackson Arnold as a thrower. We obviously know he's an elite athlete with his legs. He ran for 150 yards, and like 2 touchdowns against on that Baylor game. But I don't think this Oklahoma defense, I think that might be one of the best units on their team. I don't think this is an Oklahoma defense that you can just run against the whole entire game. We saw Michigan kind of struggle to get the run game going, especially the quarterback run. Granted, I don't know if it was more of a philosophy thing or if it was just because they couldn't, especially with Bryce Underwood, because we saw the next game with Bryce Underwood, he started running a lot. But as far as that Michigan game, the Michigan and OU game, that defense was just locked in. They broke loose for one huge run. Justice Haynes broke loose for one 70-yard run. But outside of that, things were pretty tame. And I thought that's why Bryce Underwood kind of struggled to get things going because they couldn't establish the run. So I think the only way, not the only way, but I think a big factor of if Auburn is going to be able to win this game is, are they going to be able to stretch the field vertically? Are they going to be able to spread out the field and complete some passes? Because like I said, I don't think this OU defensive front and defense in general is a group that you're just going to be able to ground and pound with. I think you're going to have to get creative in the passing game to, get some momentum and get some advantage. For OU, again, Auburn, I do like Auburn's defense. We haven't seen OU really get the running game going this year. They haven't necessarily needed it, but I just don't think. Again, I'm extremely high on OU. I'm extremely high on John Mateer, but I don't think you just want John Mateer dropping back and throwing the ball 30 plus times a game. And we obviously know he's a good runner, but just over the course of the season, if he's your main ground game, if your main ground game is a quarterback run, I think that's going to put a lot of wear and tear on him. We already saw what Justice Haynes or Haynes King already missed a game early in the season because he's running the ball 20, 25 times a game. I don't think that's a recipe for success if you have John Mateer, carrying the ball 15, 20 times a game. They really need to get their run game going. Jaden Ott out of Cal, he's kind of struggled to get things going. I don't know if it was an injury or what the case was, but I think Oklahoma has multiple ways to win this game. I think they could win a defensive slugfest. I think they could win a shootout through the passing game, but I think especially with their schedule coming up, you really want to start becoming multidimensional and not just kind of a one-way team that's really just throwing the ball and running with the quarterback. So I'm very curious to see if Oklahoma does get that running game going. The spread on this one is sitting at -6.5 Oklahoma. I honestly like that spread. I am just so much more high on Oklahoma than I am Auburn. I like Jackson Arnold, but again, there's been some questions with his arm ability. He has 5-star ability, but we just really haven't seen him develop as a passer so far. And I just trust Oklahoma. I trust the quarterback. I trust him being at home. I think that's a huge advantage. And I just trust their defense to make stops and come to play and, give that Auburn offense some trouble. So I'm going to take Oklahoma. I'm going to lay the points. I like them -6.5. So, yeah. Next up, we got Michigan versus Nebraska. This is a really, really good game that I'm excited for. I think there's so many different avenues and narratives of this game. Is this going to be the game where Nebraska, we can finally say they're back and they're legit? Are we going to see the passing game of, or just the overall offense of Michigan develop more? They are. Let's start with Michigan. I think the first couple games, again, I don't know if, like I touched on earlier, I don't know if it's been a philosophy thing with Michigan or if it's been, you know, they just don't want to put Bryce Underwood in that situation. But the way he played against Central Michigan, I think that's the way they need to play him for the rest of the season. This was a guy coming in who was seen and thought of as a big time dual threat quarterback, a guy who had elite talent with his arms and elite talent with his legs. And for whatever reason, we just have not seen that in the first couple weeks for Michigan. And like I touched on the Oklahoma game, I don't know if we didn't see the QB run more because of, again, if it was a philosophy thing or if it was, maybe they just didn't want to run him. But I think going into the Central Michigan game, I think the coaching test staff kind of just turned, thinking around and said, like, we have to use his legs, like, if we're going to be a successful team. And I think they proved it extremely well in that Central Michigan game. Bryce Underwood, he threw for 230 yards. He ran for 114 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground. We saw a lot of QB design runs. We saw a lot of scrambling. And we saw, him just being an athlete. And again, that's Central Michigan. Obviously, that's an inferior opponent. But I think just seeing and proving that, hey, this guy can stretch the plays with his legs. This guy can, if the pocket breaks down or if, the offense breaks down, he can make things happen with his legs. And I think that's Michigan has to do that to become the best version. Because even over the last couple of years, we've seen Michigan with J.J. McCarthy. They've been a team who's been primarily dominant on the run and even quarterback run. How many times over the last couple of years in big games have we seen J.J. McCarthy on Michigan? The pocket breaks down. He takes off and scrambles to extend the play. He runs for 10 yards. He runs for 12 yards. I thought that was a big component of Michigan's offense. Because J.J. McCarthy, he was not even a sneaky athlete. This was a guy who people knew he had burners on him. He had legs on him. And that brought so much success to their offense. So I think going forward for Michigan to continue to have offensive success, because in the first couple games, again, Bryce Underwood didn't play bad, but as a true freshman, I think you want to give him the best opportunity to play to his strengths. And his legs are one of his strengths. For Nebraska, like I said, is this going to be the game where we kind of say, oh, wow, Nebraska might be back, man. They might be back because we've been waiting for it. They're starting 3-0. They've, won kind of all types of games this year, blowout games. They won that game against Cincinnati where we thought they were going to blow it like they always do. But they're 3-0, looking to get a big-time win at home. Again, like, it just always feels like a game, like this game specifically, that Nebraska just has not been winning the last couple games. They're getting a little buzz. They're getting a little momentum. I'm going to take Nebraska. I like Nebraska to win, especially with them being at home. I think I'm not super high on Nebraska, but I do like them this year. I'm not ready to say, hey, Nebraska's back, but I think a year two with Dylan Raiola, I think he's starting to come into his own. They're at home. The crowd's going to be behind them. I think their defense has been playing well this year, and I think going up against a true freshman, again, it is hard winning on the road as a true freshman in a good environment. And I don't think that's going to be any different here. I do think it's going to be a close game. I definitely do. But if you're going to give me 2.5 points with Nebraska at home, I'm going to take it. I might take the money line. I do think this is going to be a kind of a season-defining game for Nebraska. If we look back in a few weeks, and who knows, they're 6-7-1 and ranked in the top 20. I think this would be a pivotal game to look back at and saying, hey, that's when Nebraska got their swagger back. That's when they finally kind of turned things around and proved that they can win the big games. So I'm excited to see this game again. I got Nebraska plus 2.5. I hope that doesn't come to bite me. I like Michigan. Go blue. But I don't know. Something in me just is screaming Nebraska. And if I can get them as an underdog, I'm going to take them. Oh, and another big major key or major point that I forgot to bring up was Michigan doesn't have their coach. I forgot about that. He was suspended for the last game and for this game against Nebraska. The difference between that, though, was last week he could actually be around the team. He could practice with the team leading up to the week or the game. He just couldn't coach. This week, he is not able to be around the team at all. So starting at the end of the game, or I think like at midnight on Sunday last week, up until midnight on Sunday this week, after the game, he is not allowed to have contact with his team. I know people have been bringing up that, Michigan's been through this, Sharon Moore's been through this. Although I do agree, yes, Michigan and, that coaching staff and even maybe some of those players who might still be on the team, they've been through the situation where, Jim Harbaugh, the year they won the national championship, he was suspended for the first, 2 games, and then he was suspended for the last 2 or 3 games. Although I do agree, yes, they've been through this and they've had that experience, I think this is different, especially coming into a game when you're starting a true freshman, because the difference between, I think, this team and that Michigan team was that Michigan team had a lot of veteran guys who had been on that team for multiple years. So with a veteran group, your quarterback's a 3-year starter, running backs are, high-level character, long-time starters. I don't think it was that big of a deal because, a lot of them have been there. That adversity, I don't think, was going to shake up a lot of them. And the fact that during then, Jim Harbaugh, he was allowed to be around the team. Like, he could be around the team. He just couldn't be with the team on game day. And especially when you're starting a true freshman at quarterback, a guy who doesn't, he may not be at that maturity level to really lead a team. He's still developing, still coming into his own. I think that has a bigger impact than it may seem to be. Again, the game's played on the field. I'm sure there's other coaches around there. The interim head coach, he was the guy at Charlotte. He has head coaching experience, so I'm sure he's going to be able to get that Michigan team together. But I do think that is definitely something to look at. And that also did go slightly that did come slightly into my head when I was making my picks as to why I slightly leaned more towards Nebraska. But yeah, that's something to look at, something to keep your eye on. Next up, we got a rematch of, the week 1 game last year, Florida versus Miami in the Swamp, or last year's matchup was in the Swamp. Obviously, Florida just got absolutely handled by Miami last year, but Miami was a pretty solid team last year, and again, they bring back another good solid team. This game's going to be super interesting, man. What kind of Florida are we going to get? Is DJ Lagway really just not the guy yet? Obviously, coming off that terrible loss to LSU, throwing 5 interceptions, just not looking like he's really ever played quarterback before. And to have to come back the very next week to go into the road environment of Miami, although it's not LSU at night, that Miami crowd, they can get lit when they have a good team to root for. We saw that crowd was on fire the opening night against Notre Dame. That's an energy I've never seen. I haven't seen in Hard Rock in a long, long time. So I don't doubt that this crowd is going to be just as big. There's a lot of Gator fans out there, so I think, the Gator fans are going to fill up the crowd as well. But I think that can be a good environment for Miami. This is, in my opinion, just a tough spot for Florida. Everything they kind of struggle, and again, I'm not one to say, LSU beat Florida, so that means, I don't really like to use other games as factors into a game that has nothing to do with it. But in my opinion, Miami, I think I might come out with my top 25 list, or just my top 25 teams. I think I would have to put Miami at number 1, if I'm being honest. Because, again, Ohio State, I know they were ranked higher at the preseason, but outside of the Texas game, and Texas doesn't look to really be a team who's as dominant, or at least as of right now, seem to be as good as we thought their number 1 preseason ranking would lead you to think they were going to be. So, that's still a good win, Ohio State versus Texas, but I would slightly favor Miami over Ohio State right now. I just think Miami is just a complete team that just at this point truly has no weaknesses. And I think they've played good enough competition to, I think, make that statement. It's not like they've played absolutely nobodies. They beat Notre Dame. They played USF. Like, we've seen them against good quality teams. And that defense looks so much more improved. The defensive back group specifically. The defensive line is looking like one of the most elite units in the country. The offensive line, in my opinion, is a top 3 unit in the country. The receivers, I think that's what has surprised me the most about Miami is they lost so much talent in the receiver room last year, and to come in, replace those guys, and be a good unit out on the field has impressed me a lot. They're able to get open, they're making catches, big plays, and obviously Carson Beck. This is a guy that I've always been high on. I didn't think just because he had a somewhat down year at Georgia that was going to translate into this year. He's probably number 2 right now if in my Heisman ballot. If I had one, I'd probably, if the season ended right now, he'd probably finish second. But I just think this Miami team is just a complete team right now. They're playing well on all phases of the game. And this is just such a tough spot for Florida because they struggled with that LSU defense. They couldn't get things going. DJ Lagway was struggling. He was struggling to see things on the field. And I think Miami is honestly a better version of LSU right now. Obviously, the struggles of LSU's offense kind of kept Florida in that game. The fact that LSU couldn't really take advantage of all the turnovers that they got, only scored 2 offensive touchdowns. I think if Florida plays the same way against LSU that they do, and again, I don't think DJ Lagway is going to have another 5 turnover game. But I could see him throwing a pick or 2, especially, with the defensive line of Miami getting after him. If he turns the ball over like he did against LSU, I do think this Miami offense will make him pay. And I think this game could get away from Miami pretty fast, and it could turn pretty ugly. But yeah, like I said, it's just so bizarre to see the struggles of DJ Lagway because this is a guy in the last 6 games last year finished 6-0 and just in all the games he started and just played extremely well. And to come to the season, I understand he was hurt, but we're in week 4 now. At some point you have to start showing some sign of life. And this is a guy who's been getting worse every single week. And then another thing that just makes me not want to take Miami is they're just so undisciplined right now. They had a 75-yard touchdown against LSU get called back for a hold. They had 3 touchdowns in 1 possession against USF get called back. You can't make that up, and that's a coaching issue right there. When your team is going out there, I think I might be wrong, but they're up there in the country when it comes to flags per game. And you got guys spitting on people, and it's just so undisciplined, and that right there is coaching. DJ Lagway throwing 5 picks in the game. Yeah, coaching has a factor to that, but I think that you can sum that up as the quarterback just not seeing the field. But when you're having multiple touchdowns a game getting called back, 75-yard touchdowns in a night game at LSU getting called back, that's coaching right there. That's coaching. And again, turnovers combined with undisciplined play and getting flags, if they don't clean up those 2 things, I don't even see this game being competitive. Because I think Miami is firing on all cylinders right now. And if you can't play a clean game when it comes to turnovers and penalties, I think Miami's going to be in a position to take advantage of that. Again, it's so hard not to overreact to the first couple games of how Miami season started. I'm trying to still hold out because I do think this Florida team is talented. Their defense has played exceptionally well. I know they shouldn't have lost to USF, but they still held USF to 18 points. It was the offense that kind of sold them against LSU. You throw 5 turnovers, but you still only lose by 7 and give up 20 points and 13 offensive points. One of those, obviously, 27 of those 20 points being a pick six. The defense played extremely well against LSU. If the offense made a couple less mistakes and a couple plays here and there, um, they could have very well easily won that game. That's why I'm not. That's why I don't want to count Miami or Florida out yet. But I just think this is a tough spot for them. I think Miami's just playing some of the best football in the country. So the spread right now is 7.5. I'm gonna take Miami minus 7.5. I'm all over that. I think this team is just on the complete opposite end of the spectrum in terms of playing as a unit and playing together and playing good football compared to how Florida is playing. So we're taking Miami. We're taking the points minus 7.5. Next game we're going to touch on is, I think, our first real Big Ten matchup, our first Big Ten conference game. And I honestly don't know why this game wasn't the big noon game. That's kind of weird. Don't get me wrong. I'm not mad about it. It's a 7:30 kickoff on NBC. I'm going to be going to the Louisville game this weekend. So I'm not mad because that's a 12 o'clock kickoff for the Louisville game. So I'll be able to watch this game. And this is a game that I'm really excited to see. Indiana, this is a team who's bringing in Fernando Mendoza. They're bringing in an elite run game. I think so far this year as a team, they're averaging over 6 yards per carry, 6 to 7 yards per carry. Out of all 3 or the 4 guys running backs who have contributed significantly, I think all of them are averaging over 5+ yards per carry. The offensive line has been elite. Obviously, again, they haven't played anybody. I think this Illinois defense is going to be a big test. This is kind of a must-win game for both of these teams. The schedules are a little challenging. Indiana, they still have to play Oregon. They still have to play Penn State, if I'm not mistaken. So I know Illinois still has to play Ohio State. They have a couple other big teams that they play. So the winner of this is going to kind of get a big boost, especially in that Big Ten race, and especially an at-large race for to be in the Big Ten to represent the Big Ten in the college football playoff. The loser, it's going to be tough because 10-2. I think 10-2 is the absolute worst you can go to get into the playoffs. So, the loser of this really has only maybe one more opportunity to slip up for the rest of the season to kind of finish at 10-2. So the winner, I think, is going to have a big advantage on this one. Indiana, I think they are kind of being slept on a little bit this year. I kind of was a lot higher than them than most people were. I think they brought in an excellent quarterback. Obviously, Fernando Mendoza came from Cal. They brought back an elite run game, and I'm about Sig, man. I'm about Coach Sig. He's a winner. He's proven. I don't care if he played an easy schedule last year. He did what you're supposed to do against the easy schedule. How many teams have we seen have easy schedules and still lose and slip up? You know what I'm saying? Notre Dame freaking lost to NIU last year with the easy schedule, and he didn't do that. I like Illinois as well. I think Brett Bielema I think he's finally got his team. Luke Altmaier is playing at an impressive level, but I'm leaning towards Indiana on this one, man. I think the spread is 4.5 right now. Indiana being favored. I think I like. That's tough. Look, 5.5. Indiana's 5.5 right now. I'm torn on this one. This is probably one I'm not going to bet, just because I think that 5.5 spread is way too big. I like Indiana to win this game. Something in me just tells me that they are for real and they're going to cover the spread, but I have to respect Illinois and what they've been doing. I'm going to take Illinois to cover the spread on this one at 5.5, but I do like Indiana to win. And I would not be surprised at all if Indiana won't cover the spread, but just because I do have a lot of respect for Illinois and I think this is going to be a good matchup. Actually, you know what? Nope. we're going with our gut on this one. I am taking Illinois or Indiana. I'm taking them to cover the spread. Um, Something just tells me that they are going to show up at home. Kirk Signetti, I think he's going to shut people up because obviously I don't even think since they've been there they've had one real big win. And I think this is going to be the big win they get. I am taking IU. I am taking them -5.5. The last game we'll talk about, as far as our picks, will be Michigan State versus USC. USC, man, I know they getting a lot of preseason buzz. They're finally in the top 25. This is a team that's second in the country in scoring at 55 points per game. Jaden Maiava, I think Lincoln Riley finally has an elite quarterback that he likes. He's leading. He's first, second, or third in basically every quarterback's statistical category. But this spread right now is at 18.5. And I've watched a couple Michigan State games this year, and I think Michigan State is honestly a solid team this year. Childress, the quarterback from, I think he was a freshman last year maybe, or whatever he was that came with their coach from Oregon State. I think he's improved a lot. That Boston College game, I think that showed a lot of guts in that game, and I think Michigan State is vastly improved this year. I have them winning, 6. I think they should be able to make a bowl game, 6, maybe 7 wins. Right now, the spread's sitting at 18.5. I think that's a big, big number. I'm honestly going to take Michigan State on this one to cover that spread at 18.5. Because, again, I'm still not completely sold on USC. They have not had a tough schedule. They haven't, really played. They struggled with Purdue. Purdue's the first legit team they've played, and they didn't struggle, but they didn't look as buttoned up as you would think they would look like against Purdue. And again, that 18.5 number is just too big, man, because you could still win by double digits and still not cover that spread. And I'm not going to let the 3-0 for Michigan State fool me, but I do think they're a much improved team this year. So I'm going to take them to cover the spread, 18.5. We're going to quickly end things by just touching up on a couple other games that we like or that we see coming up. I'm not going to get too in-depth on these, just going to, kind of tell you what I like. Tulane versus Ole Miss. I'm really interested to see this one. Tulane, I was wrong about Tulane. I picked Duke to win last week, and they kind of just went out there, and they've just been playing extremely well this year. Obviously, they got the quarterback from BYU. He's, a stud. BYU, I thought BYU was going to be one of the top Big 12 teams this year if they had him, but they've been playing well. The spread on this one's at 11.5. We don't really know what the quarterback situation for Ole Miss is going to look like. Austin Simmons came in for a little bit last game against Arkansas, but, wasn't really able to finish the game. The backup, though, came in and, still was able to win the game. I think they put up, 41 points. The defense of Ole Miss has been a little questionable this year. I don't know if it's just because Arkansas has a lot better offense than we think, or if Ole Miss's defense is just going to struggle a little bit. But they did give up 35 points to Arkansas. And this Tulane offense and team in general is just good. So I like, that's another play that I like. I like Tulane at plus 11.5 to cover that spread. I think Notre Dame bounces back and gets a statement win against Purdue. Notre Dame's not going to start 0-3. I think they're too good of a team to do that. Both of the losses have come by a combined 4 points. I just don't see them losing. Vandy, I like Vandy, man. They're going to get their revenge on Georgia State. It's still kind of surprising to see how well Vandy played last year, to realize they started out the season by losing to Georgia State, which is crazy to think about. Let's see if there's any other good matchups coming up. Temple, Georgia Tech. I think Georgia Tech's gonna win that pretty easily. But yeah, we might just end the video right there. Iowa Rutgers. I forgot about that game. Iowa Rutgers. I kind of like Rutgers on this one. I know Rutgers a 2.5 point dog. They're playing at home. That Iowa offense has just been one of the most disgusting things to look at. Um, this is, man, if Rutgers could start 4-0, that'd be pretty interesting, man. That'd be pretty interesting. Arkansas and Memphis is another one that I'm intrigued with. Memphis is a 7.5 point dog. Again, that Arkansas offense could be explosive, like we just talked about, or it could be a situation where Ole Miss's defense is just, not that great. But Memphis, I think, is going to be one of the top teams in the group of five. Um, I almost like Memphis to cover that spread. It's sitting at plus 7.5. If it got up to like 8.5, I think I'd be all over it. I do think obviously Arkansas wins, but I do kind of like Memphis to cover that spread. Syracuse versus Clemson. I've seen people on this one. Um, I I'm I think Clemson minus 16.5 point favorites. I think they're going to cover the spread on this one. I've been waiting for the count, and I could be wrong. I'm not. Trust me, I'm not going to bet this one. This one doesn't even count for anything. I just think maybe I'm still holding out for Clemson for some reason. I still do think they are a better team than what they are putting out right now, and I think this may be the week they turn around against Syracuse. I wouldn't be surprised if Clemson does cover that spread. But yeah, we'll cut it right there. We've been going on for a little bit. Week 4 is here. We'll be here to do a preview after the weekend. Gonna try and put out an updated top 25 list for who I like in my top 25. Gonna be putting out a updated. I think we're gonna try and do this every 4 games. 4, 8, 12. Yeah, we can do this probably about 3 times. So I'm gonna try and put out a updated playoff projections. Obviously, there's been a lot of shakeup in these first few weeks. I had some teams in my projected playoff list that might not be in there anymore. So I think it's going to be one of the next couple videos I put out is an updated playoffs projection. So keep an eye out for that. And as always, like, comment, subscribe. Have a good weekend of college football, baby. Let's go.